CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.
Welcome to Global Africa Conversations, brought to you by the Wits Business School Center for African Philanthropy and Social Investment. The Global Africa Conversation bring to you global African leaders from different professions, different walks of life, different interests. We have selected feminist leaders, political leaders, entrepreneurs, and NGO leaders who are working on matters of Africa's economic transformation, women's political leadership. This program is normally run by Professor Becky Moyo, who's currently on business leave, and I am standing in for him, and hopefully you will find the replacement half as competent as the main presenter. My name is Brian Tamuka Kagoro, and here we mix humor with seriousness, but we keep it real. Welcome to Global Africa Conversation, coming to you from the Wits Business School, CAPSI. I'm joined by some of Africa's most profound leaders. I've had the privilege to talk to many of them, but here is one that has been doing many exciting things. Serah, welcome.
Thank you.
Who is Serah?
Who is Serah? I'm a Pan-Africanist. Mm-hmm. I am from Nigeria. Mm-hmm. I work with the One Campaign as the Executive Director for Africa. Mm-hmm. I am a daughter of Africa's complexity. Mm-hmm. And I fight to ensure that Africa has a lot more agency. I love the little things of life. Mm-hmm. I'm passionate and I lead with a lot of conviction for the big and the small things, mm-hmm. for better or for worse. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's Serah.
So tell me, what shapes or shaped your consciousness and activism?
So I think it started, there are like 3 milestone things along my journey. The first is I grew up in Nigeria in the 80s, and the 80s were military rule, right? And I have a father who's in the military.
Wow.
And I remember sitting down, my father was a defense attaché in Cameroon, and so he would come to Nigeria and go back to Cameroon. And I remember one time he was in Nigeria, sitting down at the TV, evening TV, watching the news, and his name comes up as a governor of a state. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh no, this is not what I do. So he called the president at the time, Babangida, and said, sir, thanks, but no thanks. Military guys, the military doesn't give you options. It gives you directives.
Take orders.
Correct. Yeah. Mm. But he's a little interesting in that one. So obviously the president said, it's a direct order. You will report at your station in X number of months. And I remember my mother in a corner weeping. So my father is distraught, my mother's weeping. And I, as a 10-year-old, I thought, what's going on here? There's clearly something going on here. But I think that moment and my father's journey in the governance and government did something. It started my curiosity about what leadership could look like and what it can do. Mm-hmm. I realized in his office in the government house was adjacent to the home, right? There was one long hallway. He would dress up in his uniform and all the pins, and he would walk to work. Mm-hmm. And with a signature, he would build roads. Wow. Mm. He would put boreholes in communities. He was able to do such amazing things with just policy, with just signing things. Mm-hmm. And I think his own history with the government is also, and the military is interesting because I think military guys, at least, and my father is from northern Nigeria. I think also
where in the north?
In Niger State.
I see. Okay.
Right. So there's also, and my mother is from southern Nigeria. Mm-hmm. So military guys are the true unifiers of Nigeria, because their wives are from different places.
And love knows no
geography. You know what I'm saying? So as this man is, and I think northern military men of that age were very administrative, less politician, more administrative. So he was very strict about transparency, very strict about money. Everyone had to sign for everything. So I watched transparency, and maybe transparency on steroids, from a very close, vantage point. So that was one experience, and I think it stoked this interest in government and what government can do. On the other side, I have a mother who was a pastor, became a pastor, and quite activist in her pastoral expression. Because some of my memories are her protesting abacha with pots and pans. The women went on the streets. So you can imagine the picture of my house. My father's in the military. My mother is out in the street protesting the military. And we could choose, like we could watch both things occur. And I remember I think it was 1998, I believe, when Abacha died. And we all ran to the streets rejoicing. And so that was the kind of household I grew up in. And a mother who was very conscious about those who didn't have. So there were lots of orphanage visits. We would go to church in the most remote parts, even though we came from middle class means. And you didn't have a choice not to go to church as a child in my mother's house. So you would follow her.
That choice was made for you.
Exactly. You were voluntold. You would follow her, and every Christmas, our Christmases were, she would give you money, all the kids, we were 5. Here's money, you go to the market and you buy presents for the orphanage. So Christmas wasn't about you getting presents. It was about you buying
giving
presents to others. So these kinds of things marked the way I saw the world. And then because of this sort of fascination with government, I ended up going to Kennedy School, again, opening the aperture for what service looks like, what it looks like in different countries, understanding the literature of government and leadership, very theoretical, and engaging with a lot of Nigerians. And my class had 200 students, my master's class had 200 students, of which 4 were Africans. The MPP class of 2007, and 2 of us were Nigerian and 2 of us were Ghanaian. We would always advocate for benevolent dictatorship in the Kennedy School. We're like, no, this democracy thing is not working for us. No, let's just get Lee Kuan Yew, African style, nice guy, put him in government. This is the way. And so because of our experience, we would challenge these notions of democracy, as it were.
These orthodoxies.
Yes, exactly. And I think that also was an interesting bucking against the trend and holding our own from our own lived experience. And then ending up going home and being in the middle of Occupy Nigeria, seeing the agitation of the people and the government, what that looked like. And I always had this bittersweet relationship with government, because on one hand, it does some amazing scale things. On the other hand, if it's not reined in properly, if it's not shepherded, it can go amok. So I think I stand in that place with pride. And as I've sort of matured in what the future looks like, it does seem like there must be a combination of government, of activism, of people's voices, and an actual impact on real people in real places. Not this highfalutin, Hausa they call it, Dogon Turanci, big English, but actual someone's life actually changes as a result.
From grammar to actual.
Exactly.
So, this is interesting. So, you come back, it's in the midst of Occupy Nigeria, Yanama movement in Senegal, soon thereafter, at about the same time, Tunisia happens. Then followed by Tahrir Square in Egypt. Malema is coming up as having his disagreements with the ANC. Kenya has a peace movement going on. Sudan is boiling. There is a boiling of youth, young people's impatience with the establishment. And we're back now in a moment similar to that moment. What's your analysis of of these movements and some of the lessons learned over the last, it's now more than a decade, it's almost 15, 16 years now.
And I think, in addition, the moment we're in. So we saw Egypt, the uprising was beautiful to behold, but the outcome was less neat than we expected. We see a pattern of the agitation, the passion, without necessarily thinking through the structure afterwards. And I'm not sure it's the same entity that must do both, but we must do it alongside. And so there's something around, yes, let's be pointed about what we want. So very clear-eyed about, is it a regime change? Is it, there was the NSARS in Nigeria recently. Is it bad governance? Is it better treatment from the police? Let's be very pointed about what we want. Let there be strategy around how we can push the boundaries till we get the right attention to move the dial on that thing and ideally topple it. So we achieve the thing that we want. But right alongside that must be, and then where's the structure to negotiate the interim moment?
As somebody said, the morning after.
Yes.
Right? You've pushed out this thing you don't like.
Right.
There's a vacuum.
Yes.
And power abhors
a vacuum. So you need to fill it with probably not the same entities that were on the street, but a trusted allies and bridges to bridge us to more structure. And it can seem a bit academic. We're trying to boil down what we learned to say, let's not do it that way. Let's try it this way, and we'll see if it works, right? But there is something about a bridge to more structure. There is something about a lot more participation of young people in government and politics. Because I think there is a difference between how politics plays out in reality and how it plays out in our heads. There is the entrenched and the vested interest of politics, especially on the continent, that I think a lot more people have to declare it about, because for you to solve a problem, you need to know what the problem is. But half the time, we don't know what the political problems are. We guess they're this, we see the impact of the problem, but we don't actually know the underbelly of the problem. And being in politics, in government, allows you to see the underbelly of the problem, so that when you're solving with the right variables. Yes.
Somebody said in a Nigerian newspaper years back that idealism increases with one's distance from the problem. So the outrage of young people helped to stop unaccountable power. It helped to get rid of dictatorship. It helped to reform institutions, and somehow we settled back into the same old habits. And I was reflecting on this, looking specifically at young women or women within these movements. Not enough analysis has been done. I know that there was something done by Professor Awino Akech and others about do these movement spaces portray a different gender politics?
Interesting.
Do they have a consciousness around the class contradictions? How do they handle religious, regional, ethnic, and other differences? What's been your observation?
That's an interesting question. You know, the unpacking of women's roles in these movements, when we had the NSARS, there was something called, first of all, it was Gen Z, really young people. Second of all, what struck me was how organized they were. They were almost determined to tell the world that they're young, but they are structured and they're clean. So they would clean up after themselves. They would share food. They would project these signals of we're not trying to cause, mayhem. We actually on a mission. And then there was the third element of this FEMCO that was the organizing structure of this protests. They crowdsourced funding. They managed the funding. They had a database of legal
like the protection.
Yes, so that if you got arrested, they would match you with the right thing. So they were almost a back end kind of invisible hand doing the structural thing. It was unfortunate that at the end of that, the government really took names and numbers. So they were harassed leaving the country. A lot of them have left the country as a result. And so it makes me think about women's inherent assets. I think we are naturally incubators. We not only incubate life, we incubate ideas, and we can bring it to pass. When I work, quite frankly, I like working with women because they're detailed-oriented. You know, they like the database, the spreadsheets, the things.
I mean, think about this. Somebody jokingly said to me the other day that men can imagine a relationship and not the consequences, right? And which is why you have a paternity, child care, child support, and other challenges. Right. And so, looking at these young women in the movement who are doing phenomenal things, whether it's Hanifa in Kenya, who raised money to respond. Yeah. The young women you're talking about within the FEMCO you're talking about within. What sort of support do they get from older women?
Yeah.
What sort of peer mentorship do they get? What sort of solidarity?
Goodness, there's a movement right now called it's a reserved women's seat in Parliament and government, in Parliament in particular. And I've watched it a bit from a distance, and I've seen shall we say, the differences between the older feminists and the younger feminists. And I'm observing that they don't necessarily all get together. There's sometimes a bit of I don't know if it's turf war. There's something happening with the intergenerational nature of that mix is not as seamless as you'd imagine.
The tension.
Yes, yes. So I think that we're not paying attention to it. I don't think we're as intentional about it. But I would expand it to not just women, even the mentorship, to young men as well. I actually think that we need to have a coalition of people who have been in government, who can mentor the next generation on what it is to be in government. I like people who have been in government because they're more honest to speak. Sometimes they're not edging politically for the next thing. Sometimes they are. But there is a battle scar that you can show and tell. You see, this was when I didn't pay attention to the civil servants and I did XYZ. So those crop of people, what Madame Ellen Justice Sirleaf is doing with this Amuja, exactly. We need a lot more of those, especially from people who are out of government, to say, this is what the underbelly looks like. And this is how you prepare yourself, especially when you want to align aptitude and credibility with ethics in a system where perhaps it's not encouraged or celebrated.
But where the highest currency is power.
Exactly. And getting power is by any means necessary. It's not, oh, well, I care about X, Y. No, it's just get it at any costs. And impact is almost a secondary consideration.
Because we're here to govern.
Correct, to get power. That's it. And with power, I can then do the strings. But we need a crop of leaders who understand power, because power is a topic I love. I want to study that. I want to know more about how it expresses itself in different spaces, because it's so important. But power is a means to an end. It's a means to purpose. So what is that purpose? What is that impact? And I don't think we are shaping our young minds, our African young minds, that there's an equation that things must balance in that equation. It must be, you must know how to do things, how to work with different stakeholders, move things in this polar, multi-ethnic, multi-dimensional, multi-vested interest world. How do you move your agenda through all of that? Yeah. How do you stay true to your principles, whatever that is, and whatever values you have? How do you affect people's lives tangibly? You're not squinting to say, oh, did we? No. You can ask people, is your life different? And they'll say, yes, it's you. Once I was lost, but now I'm found. Yeah. Right? It's very binary. And that confluence, I think that's the silver bullet, if there ever was one, for the continent, for us to have that leadership that understand what it takes and they can practice safely so that they can be exposed and to practice in the real world.
You know, somebody shared with me years back a Moroccan proverb which says, let's be like a tree that changes its leaves with each season. But never changes its roots. Thinking about these things that have shaped your consciousness, what keeps you up at night?
Honestly, it's African leaders. It's the fact there is an urgency of the moment when you see where the geopolitics is heading. Africa becomes battleground for anti-China, pro-China. The West is hedging its own interests. We have been a source of cheap everything. Labor, minerals, inputs, fill in the blank. And there's no incentive for Africa to not be that from the rest of the world. And then to add that geopolitical picture to domestic realities, 2050 we will have 800 million Africans eligible to be in the workforce. Right. Let that number settle in a little bit.
150 million.
By 2050.
That's Nigeria, plus Ethiopia, plus South Africa,
DRC.
plus the DRC, the whole East Africa.
Looking for jobs. So what are we doing today? 2050 is in 25 years. It's in 2 decades plus change. How are we going to absorb that teeming population that eclipses many countries as we have it? Nigeria is the giant of Africa. Yeah, right. 800 million is 4 times.
It's 4 times.
Right? So that's the current context we're in. And then I perceive that we have leadership that doesn't understand the urgency of the moment and are governed too closely by the political calendar of power. And
Which
so
is
there's
5-year cycle.
Yes, 5, 4. And so the things that need to be done, because we need a long runway to get all these things ready. Those things, who's holding it? Who's holding the long-term vision? Yeah, we have Agenda 2063, but I mean, AU moves deliberately, shall we say, right? Also, Agenda 2063 was created, the world in which Agenda 2063 was created has changed.
Totally different, yeah.
So where's the updates? Where have we, the software updates?
In fact, the world in which we adopted the African Charter on Democracy, Elections,
has also
and governance.
changed. But there's the agility to say, wait, hold on a second, this is coming down the pike. All that stuff that you have in a China that has a leader that says we have one party and we're doing 100-year plans, everyone fall in line, for better or for worse, we don't have. So I worry that we are not ready for prime time on the continent. I worry that we don't have the right midwives to birth the new Africa. I worry that we will be in the same place we have been during the colonial times, where we are a source of extraction to the end of others and never to the end of ourselves. And I'm having a hard time seeing who can be the people who take us to the promised land, leaders. And it's leadership. I mean, we can nickel and dime and say, oh, well, leadership can be anything, but at the end of the day, it's political leadership is where the scale is. Is where the precision is, because everything else is like pulling teeth. Like, yeah, we can be leaders in a community, but how many communities do we have? Millions and millions, but we have leaders of countries. And the way Africa will bear this moment is if we work together, right? So I was saying that if China says to its people, go left, everyone's going left. 1.4 billion people are going left. If India says go right, 1.4 billion people are going right. When Africa, 1.4 billion people says go left, right, 54 voices are speaking. So we're all confused. Are we going left, right, sideways, up and down?
And arguing which left.
Right. Is it your left or my left? How are you standing? So it's a hot mess. And yet our survival depends on if we can have a unified voice. That's why the AU is so important in theory and in practice. And because it's so important now, the cost of inaction of the AU is high. Because that is a body that can galvanize this joint force to take on the rest of the world. And it's not happening thoroughly enough. It's not happening quickly enough. And it's just not, it's leaving a lot to be desired. Yet, there's a moment, and the moment is not waiting for us to get our act together, and we must.
You know, from the Financing for Development conference in Sevilla, the COP in Brazil, the G20 in South Africa, and many other global spaces, we've had voices like yours trying to do two things: highlight some of the barriers to structural barriers to Africa's transformation, as well as solutions. Walk us through what are the barriers and what are the solutions.
Where do we start? I think, first of all, we're in the heart of South Africa, right? The G20 is ongoing. It's interesting that in the last 4 G20s, there's been Global South voices. Indonesia, India, Brazil, South Africa. And we're passing the baton to the Global North voices. Well, America, potentially the UK, and we'll see who takes up next. So I think that there has been, and that there's been what has typified the Global South leadership style is when you look at all the outputs from all the other G20, we've leaned to much more framework, more solutions to the problem that we jointly face than kind of norm setting, which is what the Global North typically does. And so I think that coalescing a voice is part of the solution. But if we speak directly to the barriers, one of the things that we have been pushing on is the cost of capital. Africa is the highest place in the world to borrow money. And without money, development is, it's a joke, right? Every country, every continent borrows. And Africa doesn't borrow more than others. Even though we're fiscal space and debt distress.
In fact, it is less indebted than
exactly,
the US.
But the cost of our borrowing is much higher. So the money we have to pay back is much higher. So we're not defaulting on our debt. 20 countries are at risk of debt distress, and 25 countries pay more to service their debt than they do for health and education combined.
So that means they are paying to others their future.
Correct.
Their potential.
And the present is not just stagnating, but regressing.
Wow.
Because no one waits for you. So the money, yes, we're paying staff, salary, civil servants, building schools, you're servicing your debt, and and it's probably just interest. The hole is getting deeper and deeper, so there's a long journey. So what we're saying is, number one, when all these financial architectural setups were created, Africa countries were colonies. 1920, the tax structure was created.
There were sites of extraction.
Yeah, exactly. 1945. So what Africa is saying is no shade. I mean, we weren't on the table. Sure, you designed for who's on the table. We're here now, so we need to change this architecture. It's not working for us. Even like specific things like the Basel III framework that determine risk and how they incentivize you and how much liquidity you need if you're going to risky places. We're set up with European economies in their mind. And African economies are differently structured. So if you want to price risk, you have to look at our economies. But yet these are the global norms that govern everywhere. So we're saying the global financial architecture needs to change to adapt to us because it's not enabling us to go far enough or quickly. Secondly, we're saying there's a biased perception of risk. Anything far-flung, far away from you, I don't know what they're doing over there. Let's just give them negative B. And it becomes this perception that is not grounded in methodology. Yet we're seeing things like the IFC just released a report that infrastructure investment in Africa give you much more returns than the S&P 500. And has done, if you look at that over the last 60 years, we give a lot higher returns than S&P 500. The news doesn't get far enough. And the people who are supposed to be pricing our risk are not listening to that. They're listening to, I was in Zambia the other day and they said, when the DRC has a skirmish, it might as well be Zambia because Africa is Africa. Yeah.
It's one country.
It's one big fat country. So the person was saying, how can we isolate Zambia? I said, you can't. We're all in this together. So let's just help each other. But that bias of perception has to change. And the third thing is we need to do things within the African continent to deepen our own sources of financing because follow the money. The money is the name of the game. That's how we get to our destiny, our desires. And if our money is being hijacked by a system that doesn't work for us, we need to be working on that system, but we also need to be working domestically. Why aren't we increasing the savings pool so we can use those savings pools for development? Why are some pension funds invested abroad and not internally? So we ourselves are not helping matters, but there's work for us to do internally. So the cost of capital has been a significant one for us. The second is revenue streams. We've been pushing for, we must add value to our products. You export raw, you import poverty. It's as simple as that. Every time a raw material leaves your shore to external shores that are non-African, and value is not added, we're just importing poverty. Right. So why do we have trillions under the ground and we're begging the world for millions and billions?
In fact, more interestingly and relatedly, they pay you for only, like most raw materials have byproducts.
Right.
You only get paid for the base.
Exactly. And you have left value all over the floor, the table, the ceiling. I mean, we are hemorrhaging value on the continent. And my hope is that, and not just hope, we're putting things into action. Eventually, Africa needs to ban all raw export. We're not ready today, but that's the destination we need to go. Whether it's agricultural products, whether it's minerals, whatever the case. In the interim, we need to say, if you want to add value to if you want to join us, bring your value addition into the continents. Hire from us. We don't want extraction. We want smelting, processing, refining. We'll give you maybe the next 5-10 years. You just bring it in, and we will learn. We'll attach it to universities so that knowledge can be. So that 800 million people coming to 2050, they need to start learning this new technology. And then after a certain amount of time, where we have the capacity to actually add the value, we ban it. But we can't ban it as one country. DRC can't wake up and say we're banning cobalt because they'll just go next door. Nigeria can say we're banning lithium.
There's a race to the bottom because the countries are worried about liquidity.
Exactly.
And some have a solvency problem.
I was speaking to the DRC, one of the DRC ministers many years ago, and he said there's the mine contracts are 20 to 30 years, 30 to 40 years, excuse me. But there's a clause in there so that when the price of the raw material goes up, there's a price sharing, right? You get 60%, 40%, the miners in the country. So the price of cobalt had gone up. But the miners said they weren't sharing. So the question was, he said, I've decided to ban all exports until you guys share. His coffers were running dry. So now he's going to have riots on his hands.
He has a political intention that is not economically viable.
And he's like, how long will I hold out? So I might as well just capitulate and get the money coming in so I can pay workers. Because I can't, after 3 months, I can't pay. I have a political issue, I have a social issue because of rights. So we have to do collective voice. It has to be political signaling from the continent. And it's not everywhere. It's saying, Indonesia did it. It's the minerals that we have market shaping power over. It's cobalt, it's platinum green minerals.
Or it's titanium.
Right. And it's the
lithium.
one that we have a few countries, it's not every country that has lithium, band together. Those countries now have a pact on the continent. And we say, this is the goal. Everyone gets more. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone will get more. So it's not we're expanding the pie. You just have to.
Even copper, whether it is a byproduct or is the primary source.
Right.
Tell me. So this thing about critical minerals, something I find interesting in this conversation and related to something you said. You go into African universities' curriculum, into technicons, you look at private sector itself. There's just no one who's training the next gen skills. AI is going to play a very critical role in the extractive sector and in critical minerals. So even what we're calling value addition may change.
Absolutely.
And you are telling us we are borrowing at a premium much higher than everybody else who's
Correct.
borrowing the same amount.
Correct. With the same risk pricing.
Yeah, we are paying more in debt service
Correct.
than we are investing in
Correct.
this building. So, what is the solution? How do we deal with the cost of capital and the related indebtedness and still build a reserve to invest into the future and to stabilize our economies, which was the concern, I think, of this DRC minister, that I need macroeconomic stability.
Right.
Right? And it's a country like the DRC, as many countries on this continent, you also have humanitarian crisis,
Correct.
man-made, and
Right.
so what is the solution?
So I think there's no easy sort of silver bullet anyway, but I think it has to be a portfolio and a combination of things. Number one, leadership. I mean, we can't run away from leadership. There's an agility that leadership needs today, like that education mismatch. We should be, instead of us to be teaching on curriculum that was created years ago, we need to adapt our children on how to learn. Forget what's to learn. Do you know how to learn? Because today is AI, tomorrow is, and the things are moving so quickly that you teach me science today, tomorrow they say, well, Pluto is extinct, and now it's the next thing. So our curriculum should teach our children, how do you learn? And then superimpose the topic over it, but you know how to learn. You know how to get what you need. But we're not shifting quickly enough. So again, that's policy, that's leadership, that's government. I mean, most subnational and federal governments, depending on the system, are in charge of basic to secondary to tertiary education. Where's the change? Where's the movement? Where's the agility? How do we match what we're churning out our students to do with what the private sector is asking for? How do we match what we're churning out our students to do what the competitive global landscape is asking for so we can be competitive? So leadership is going to be a critical thing, but I don't think we can wait till perfection. So at the same time, there is an accountability that is inherent to building our solution for tomorrow. We have to build in accountability. And accountability feels like an allergic reaction. When you tell government, it's like they're having an allergic reaction to it. They're saying, what are you trying to say? So my solve is three things. One, young people have to be involved in accountability and transparency movements because they don't have a DNA of not questioning. Their DNA is different. Their makeup is a little different. Their socialization is different. And I think they hold a key. Secondly, I think we need to co-create with governments. I actually don't think we should sit in a little huddle and say, okay, this is how we're going to get on the table. Government sits, okay, how do you expect us, how would you like us to hold you accountable for these spendings? So let's get your ideas. And then the technology needs to be added because this is, with digital natives, it's easier to do this at scale. So I think one of the things we do at One is in this innovative financial moment, we're speaking to the governments and we're like, can we have innovative financing to healthcare? And we can help you, we can support you with that. But one question we ask is, if another shilling, another CD, another naira does not enter the system, how do you spend what you already have inside? Because we can have more money, but if the basket has holes in it, it's a race to the bottom. So we need to have the accountability, and I think accountability is not going to come from outside Africa. I mean, the whole world is
they're busy with their own issues.
In fact, they're so busy. It's not going to come from the leaders who, in many ways, cannibalize the independent institutions. Because why does the independent electoral commission need to be that independent when I'm going up for election, right? So where's the surround sound of accountability that they need to adhere to? And I think young people hold this inherently. We do need to keep them safe, but I think how we spend what we have is going to be a key to this. And I think our revenue base, I think there's leadership, there's accountability, there's generating more, because people have their own problems now. ODA has been dwindling for the last 13 years, health ODA. If you remove, it spiked during COVID, but if you remove COVID, the line goes down. US did their thing. If you look at Europe, they're also saying, listen, we're struggling too. So ODA is not the name of the game. Domestic resources, in the moment in which we're in, where the fiscal space is so tight, you go to a president and say, well, you need more money for health. And he's telling you, 75% of my revenue, I'm paying debt services.
Service the debt.
So whatever you're smoking, give it to me so I can smoke it, because clearly...
And I'll feel irate.
Exactly. And I can then think of things that are impossible and probably do them, because I have a 22% recurring expense to pay civil servants, and that 25% will go to pay them. What's left to do anything? So it has to be additional. So what we're saying is, diaspora could be one, because we have to harness the global Africa, right? We can do health for debt swaps, but at the end of the day, we need to increase our revenue. You know, Africa contributes 3% of global GDP. I call that the 3% of disrespect. When you contribute 3%, no one really cares if you live, you die, you survive. I mean, really.
Because
really,
you are...
What are you really... We need to go to 7%. We need to go to double digits. China contributes about 17% of global GDP. The 7 is honorable. How can we get more productivity? It's a combination of increasing our revenue and adding value, actually adding more productivity to the global system. And the good news is that we have it. The bad news is that we've not harnessed it to date. And it's not without challenges. I mean, countries will decide we want to do this, and coups mysteriously occur. And
there's always
groups that were living in harmony for 1,000 years, decide, you know what, I'm not going to live in harmony. So we're not naive about the globe in which we live, but we're going to need some courage.
You don't stop acting because there's risk.
Right.
So tell me, somebody said, it was Kojo from Guyana, said, what do we need are entrepreneurial states? He said, because we structured the states under colonial rule and they were administrative. Administration essentially would focus on keeping things running.
Right.
This sort of pivots, this sort of quick thinking on the feet, adjusting and etc., requires a totally new approach to how you run the public sector, how you run public finances, and how you think about it, because it's a conservatism of the colonial structure.
Right.
Or a structure we inherited. When it becomes creative, it's in the corruption angle, right? So it's not a constructive, transformative, So that's one angle. And then Depros Mchena from Open Society said, look, there is even a bigger problem. Our politics has been de-intellectualized. It's almost criminal to be intellectual because people like this populist, make me feel good rhetoric. So, at the core of our politics, at the core of the system of selecting our leaders is an acerbic rejection of anything intellectual, evidence-based, thought through. And then I was talking to a colleague, actually it is Ndidi from One, who said, look, all those ideas that folks have that are outside of the state are not self-implementing. They need to find a bridge to get, but sometimes, even when there's capacity, there's no will. Do you agree with these colleagues?
So as you were...
Or rather, what is your own view about?
As you were laying that out, I kept thinking, a couple things came to mind. Number one is the entrepreneurial state is not too far from the African makeup. Because what are states? A combination of individuals and the way they think. I've been pleasantly encouraged by our unicorns. The companies that are $1 billion valuation in Nigeria. There's 6 of them. The average age of the founder is 27 of these $1 billion valuated companies. And what they're doing and what they've done is they've found a problem that traditional players have ignored and tapped into it, and the market has rewarded them for solving that problem. Now, for them to have gone there, the regulators had to have been in the mix. And I worked in financial inclusion for a really long time. And I watched our regulators struggle, especially in Nigeria, struggle with, well, the Kenyan regulators allow telcos to play in banking space. But the bankers in Nigeria said, don't touch money. If you touch money, it's CBN. CBN needs to. And CBN's like, do we let the telcos, do we just, for a long time, Nigeria divided telco and bank. While Kenya merged the ability for telcos to collect money. Today, Nigeria is allowing telcos to enter banking because you achieve scale of financial inclusion when you allow that. I watched the journey the regulators traveled, and in many ways we used to help educate. We would take them abroad. We would take them to Kenya, Indonesia, Pakistan, see the models. And we had learning and innovative regulators. Do they move slowly? Sure, they're risk adverse. Their whole job is trust. But we saw movement happen in short 5-6 years. So I don't know that the state is so divorced from being entrepreneurial, depending on the agency you're working with and the part of the state. Those 6 unicorns couldn't have been what they are without enabling from regulators. So we're not too far from that. So I don't want us to create a chasm that is too hard to bridge, because in many ways you'll see us in microcosm moments just reflecting this entrepreneurial ability. It needs to be scale. Yes, it needs to be more widespread. Yes, but at least we celebrate where we find it. The political system is a different kettle of fish. I was learning about how the political system came out to be in a place like Nigeria, and effectively it was during the military era. The military go, okay, we're going to hand over to civilians. So the civilians will get together, all the intellectuals, and say, okay, right. Then the military goes psych and then jail them. They did 2-3 times. Okay, this time we're handing over, and they will get together and say, okay, this is the party name, and they'll go psych, and then they'll jail them. So the last time they said, just send the secretary the drivers, because they're jailing us, we're the intellectuals. So they sent stooges, but this time they didn't say psych. So the people who started making up the building block of politics were just the driver, the secretary. And unfortunately, we didn't correct for the intellectuals, because there's a disproportionate over-indexing of lose your brain at the door when you enter politics, like power is the name of the game.
And live your soul.
That's right, absolutely. I know, what are those, right? So how do we reclaim that? And the political system, for me, I think is the greatest tragedy we have on the continent. Because if we don't correct that system, what it throws up will never reflect what we want. And yet it's the only system that throws up leadership. I mean, we're sticking with democracy, right? For better or for worse. Right, exactly. So I've given this a lot of thoughts, and I'm like, okay, do we do a brownfield or a greenfield? Do we take the current political system, shake it up from the inside, or do we just set up new political systems? And you see it play in a country like Nigeria, where the new political systems don't have the structure to carry the volume of the people and deliver on the votes. And that's why I'm a big fan of those who are in partisan politics that are no longer in government, who we can sit around the table and say, listen, what is the underbelly of this system? What do we not know? And they can give us the tips to say, if we want to change, hey, you need a war chest. You can't fight without a war chest. And what the politicians do is they hardwire the channels of resources through the political system so they can build a war chest. And you come with no war chest with a nice idea and a good brain.
You are a good-willed pauper.
Hello, please. The exit is over there. So what are these things we need to keep in mind so that we can change this model of partisan politics on the continent, so the people that it throws up, we actually have a choice of people who can be adaptable, who can look at a system and say, this education thing is not working for us, now let's change it. Get into a room, figure it out. Tomorrow we make an announcement. The policies, we're retraining teachers, we're doing this. We don't need, I say we don't need buildings to learn anymore. It could be under a mango tree with your iPads. You have a station where you can charge it, where there's solar panels, where you have a little locker, you can take it home. I mean, the world has changed. Right? So leadership is one thing. The other is the political system. And because I'm such a proponent of the government, because it has the rails already set, and I'm impatient. I don't like each one teach one. I want each one teach a million. Like that's really where my blood starts pumping.
That you get the scale,
Right. So government is each one teach 100 million. Each one affect 200. That's where we're talking. So because I'm a proponent of that, I feel like the architects within the government need to be leaning into the entrepreneurial spirit that we have as a continent, leaning into the traditions of how we used to set up in the olden days, because there was so much wisdom in that, pulling from that to adapt to where we are today and making impact with people. While power is important, I'm not discounting power, but I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I can be powerful and also be intelligent and also have impact at the same time. I think our minds are massive enough to hold all these truths at the same time, but we don't have enough actors that can, so we devolve to the lowest common denominator of power for power's sake, and that's all we're talking about.
Only African women can have the strength and the capacity to, not that we must deify it or celebrate it, it's something that must be changed. You see a woman carrying a pot or gourd on her head full of water and a baby on her back, and sometimes doing something very. So let me make that my last question for you. What does this particular moment mean for women's leadership in the economy, in society, in technology, in politics? What are those lessons that Africa can give to the rest of the world?
It's a good question. I think the ratio of men to women in the largest countries, 51% women and 49% men. So we actually is slightly more populous than the men. And if you look at institutions of colleges and universities, depending on what level you look at it, women actually there are more women than men. Certainly the churches, there's a lot of women. But as we graduate up that management ladder, we see that's kind of drop off. But I've always had the conviction that as a Nigerian, Nigerian women are strong. At some point we had, I think it was 25 banks in Nigeria, and of which it was like 6 or 7 were led by women. It wasn't an insignificant number, and these women were strong, getting good returns. So when I look at the private sector, I see women playing good, solid roles. When I look at academia, I see women playing important roles. When I pivot to politics, that's where it becomes like a wilderness. It's like the place where women's participation has been curtailed. I mean, we have Rwanda that is leading the way, but we don't, it's not, and we have Namibia, thank goodness, that is showing us how it's done. We still need results to show for that input, but I trust that it's coming. So I think we have to be able to square this gap of why aren't enough women in the political space, because again, I'm partial to government because I'm impatient. I like scale and I like impact, and government can do it quickly, at scale, and with impact. And I think women have a different style of leadership. So I think the learning for us, and technology is going to help, but I think the learning for us is, as we look internally, not even yet advising the rest of the world, but internally, we already have the building material. We already have the building blocks of women who are engaged in sectors around the world. We need to create that bridge.
Ngozi.
That's right.
Auna.
Arumate.
We have plenty.
I mean, we have a lot. The bridge to political leadership is, for me, where I think there is a chasm that needs to be built. And I think 2 things hinder women. The first is resourcing, because then you need a godfather because if you don't have an oil block or a legacy of oil block, how do you get the money to run and do all the things that the guys who have been in government there's history of making money gives men an edge. A lack of history of that, making money at scale, gives women the back foot. And I think the second is the opacity of government, where you're not necessarily sure what the reward structure is and what the incentive structure is. Women are making it, but it's not as clear. So that mentorship becomes really important. That's why I love what Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is doing. I was just pitching this idea to one of our former politicians. I mean, he's a current politician, was formerly in government. I was like, you need to train a lot more people about your war scars.
Mm-hmm.
What happened here? Where was a place where your ethics conflated with pragmatism, and what decisions did you make? And did you leave feeling like a little bit of my soul just died, or did you leave feeling like I was proud of myself? How many times did it happen? How did you square that? These are the things, I think, because of the nature, I don't know if it's cautious nature, because women take risks as well, but the nature of the opacity of public office and the dangers inherent within it.
But it goes for you at a personal level.
Yes.
It tries to destroy you.
Yes. And you come, you
Destroy your
don't stand as one. You stand
Yeah.
as many. There's your family, your kids. So you're thinking about all the people affected by your one decision, and you're like, well, let me just go home, because is it worth it for the kids who didn't have this choice? But men can unplug themselves from that and forge ahead, and they have a base at home to pick up the pieces sometimes. So that political decision can be more sort of straightforward for them.
In fact, our systems are such that nobody ever asks who the man is married to, is in a relationship with, is sleeping with. The minute a woman stands,
oh yeah,
it's almost all systems go.
Yes, right.
Patriarchy on steroids. Look, Serah, we could talk forever. If you had one last word, right, for the people who watch this and who believe in this continent and who want it changed, what would be that word?
I would say take lessons from social movements around the world. I really believe that people are the ones that always change the things they don't like. If our job is to bend the world towards justice, we have people who have gone before us. I love the civil rights movement, because entrenched within the legal constitutional papers of the US, where the black people were 3/5 of humans. That was allowed, it was accepted, and these black people said, you know what, we don't really want that. They fought, they died, they persevered to change that. They're still fighting, let's be clear. But the papers at least reflect, at least until recently, reflect that they are at least equal, if only in paper for now. So the strides they made are so instructive for me. When it feels like the structures are insurmountable, I go to civil rights movement, I go to the Aba women's riot in Nigeria, where the colonial master said, we're going to tax you market women. The market women said, oh, no, you're not. They fought so hard, and it wasn't just, there's two levels of sort of power structures, not just men, but then white men in the colonial era. So they fought some serious levels of power to become the ones who collected the tax at the end. There's about women's rights, there's the women's suffrage moment globally, where they said, wait, hold on a second, we can go to work when our husbands are at war, but we can't vote. No, I don't really I'm not okay with that. So what did? They fought, they got jailed, they died to give women the right to vote. So what is the structure that is standing before us? There are people like us with flesh and blood that came together and said, oh no, we don't like the look of the world, so we're going to change it. And they did. There's an Angela Davis prayer that says, there's that prayer, the Serenity Prayer, give me the strength to bear what I cannot change. And there's the Angela Davis quote that says, give me the strength to change what I cannot bear. And that's the prayer. We are the ones that will change the continent. Whether we're in politics, we're not in politics, we need to figure out a way, because our people before have done it. We're no different, and we can do it.
Serah, we sign off at that. It's been a phenomenal conversation. Tour de force. We've talked about matters global, matters national, matters continental. But thank you so much for making the time to join the Global Africa conversation here at the Wits School of Business, CAPSI. I'm quite sure we're going to talk again soon when Professor Moyo returns, who normally runs this conversation. And for those who've been listening, we're not short of ideas, we're not short of leaders. We need to scale up some of the great things that we are doing. And we just need to realize the struggle doesn't end in one day.
Correct.
It is a heritage that we got from our forebears. It's one that will pass on to our children, and they will pass on to their children. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.